Great. Well, thank you all for coming. This is fantastic. I'm really excited to hear the presentations today. Really appreciate everybody taking time out of your busy day. I'm Jane Wynn. I'm the current chair of the board for the Upper Housatonic Valley National Heritage Area, or Housatonic Heritage. When I first joined the board, I was really surprised at how many programs Housatonic Heritage supports. So I am really pleased today that after our brief business part of our meeting, we'll hear about at least 6 of these great programs. And thank you, Mariah, for running today's tech for the meeting. You are awesome. And with that, I will turn this over to Dan, our amazing executive director, who stewards all these efforts and keeps everything running smoothly. Thank you so much, Dan.
Yeah, terrific. Thanks, Jane, and thanks to everybody that's joining us today. We are recording this session, and we will post it to our YouTube channel, YouTube/Housatonic Heritage, as a permanent record, as required by federal law PL 109-338. We're required to hold 2 public meetings annually, and this is one of them. We'll hold our second in the late summer, likely. We haven't set the date yet for that, but this meeting is open to the public, and hopefully will give people a good idea of what we're up to, how we're spending our federal appropriations, and who the major partners are. And as I mentioned, this meeting is recorded and will live on in perpetuity in the digital world out there. If you do have questions during the presentations, please post them to the chat. We'll get to them if and when needed toward the end of the presentations, and hopefully they'll be informative and interesting. And I think hopefully you'll find them as interesting as I do. And again, thanks to Jane, our chair, and let's see, rather than doing introductions, let me just tell you who the Board of Trustees of the Upper Housatonic Valley National Heritage area are. And many of them, the trustees, are on the meeting Zoom today. Catherine Boughton, North Canaan Town Historian. Maureen Dorr from Sharon, Connecticut, History Board of Sharon Historical. Mariah Fogg, who is our current treasurer and comes to us from Berkshire Natural Resources Council. Leslie Hertzberg, who is the executive director of Berkshire County Historical Society at Herman Melville's Arrowhead. Rob Hoogs from Bidwell House Museum and Monterey Library, who is currently serving as Paul Ivory, who is our emeritus board member. Gary Levier, Great Barrington Historical Society. Aaliyah Del Molino from Green Agers in South Egremont. Paul O'Brien, who is our current secretary, Sheffield Historical Society. Craig Langlois from Pittsfield Public Schools. And of course, Jane Wynn, who is serving as our current chair. And hopefully I was going to mention Rob Hoogs from Monterey serves as our vice chair. So thank you to the Board of Trustees that allowed this organization to do the work that it does. So those are the introductions. Let me give just a very brief financial picture here. I don't have a report to share, but I will give you a quick snapshot of what the Housatonic Heritage Area's balance sheet looks like. Current liquidity, roughly $188,000 in various accounts. We do act as a fiscal sponsor for a number of programs. As you may know, Housatonic Heritage serves as a catalyst for great heritage ideas that we hope will become heritage programs. And we find ourselves as the incubator for many good ideas that are brought to us, including some that you will hear about today. But as fiscal sponsors, we do hold money in escrow for those programs. Currently, we're holding, and this is a snapshot as of the end of March, so it's probably changed a little bit, roughly $75,000 for those programs that we act as fiscal sponsor for. We also act as a conduit for federal grants to a number of programs. Currently, we have federal grant balances due monies that we have not drawn down yet, predominantly for the Du Bois Freedom Center in Great Barrington. Currently, we're holding just over $500,000 in federal money for that project as well. But total assets currently $392,337. So again, we're in a decent financial position for the time of year. As many of you know, we are the recipient of congressional appropriations. We are a program that was created, as mentioned, under Public Law 109-338, and are a member of the National Park Service National Heritage Area System. And so as part of our fiscal duties, we report out to the public at least twice a year, and of course to our Board of Trustees every month. So thank you very much for that. Quick rundown. These programs may sound very familiar because chances are you've run into one or more of them. But one of the very first programs we began was the Regional Iron Heritage Trail, and that remains active with our partners at the Beckley Furnace in East Canaan, Connecticut. The African American Heritage Trail, and more recently, the Clinton Church Restoration / Du Bois Freedom Center, that you'll hear a little bit more about in a few moments. The African American Heritage Trail continues to grow and develop. We continue to seek new partners on that, and most recently have been working with a group of secondary schools in Connecticut and Massachusetts to stage what's called the Troutbeck Symposium, which is a really amazing group of students who do research projects and then we'll do presentations in the spring, and that's coming up as well very soon. Working with the Stockbridge-Muncie Community Band of Mohicans, we've created the Native American Heritage Trail in partnership with the Stockbridge-Muncie community, and we have a website for that. Judith Monachina is the director of the Housatonic Heritage Oral History Center at Berkshire Community College, and she'll be giving a report shortly. We have a nascent program, the Du Bois National Historic Site Program, that seeks to aggregate all of the sites that are relevant to Du Bois and his upbringing in and around Great Barrington. And partners in that program include, of course, the Du Bois Freedom Center, UMass Amherst as the stewards of the Du Bois home site in Great Barrington, as well as other numerous publicly accessible sites in and around Great Barrington. There is a website up for that as well, duboisnhs.org. We have a program devoted to trails and greenways, and that program is most active right now in creating the Western New England Greenway, and that's a bikeway that begins in Norwalk, Connecticut, ends at the Canadian border, roughly 380 miles long, and that program is very active. I'll give a brief report on that in a little while here. Operation Pollination, which we manage in partnership with the National Park Service and in partnership with Rotary International worldwide. You'll hear a report from Vivian on that shortly as well. Our annual Heritage Walks weekends, which generally brings together somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 of our partners to offer free guided walks accessible to the public. And every year we have thousands of people who will come out to do a heritage walk. Yeah. And I know many of you have participated in heritage walks as well. So we're putting that program together. You should see the brochure coming out in July, likely. The walks are each weekend in September, as they are annually. This will be our 22nd year of doing Heritage Walks, so it's been a good program for us. So that's in a nutshell the programs. You'll hear a little bit more about them from some of the people who are most closely connected with them. And again, thank you all for being here. Right now, I'd like to turn it over to Nye Whitaker, who is Executive Director for the Du Bois Freedom Center. And we're very pleased to have you, Nye. Full disclosure, I sit as an ex officio board member on the Du Bois Freedom Center Board of Directors. So, Nye.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much, Dan, for the opportunity to present. I know that many of you have probably met Eugenie Sills, who is one of our consultants and has been leading the charge up until fairly recently. And so if there's anything that Eugenie would normally add to the conversation, please feel free to let me know so that I can advance our conversation forward in the future. But I thought I would take this opportunity just to share a quick update on what we've been up to recently. So many of you are familiar. The W.B. Du Bois Center for Freedom and Democracy is a 501c3 organization dedicated to educating the public about the life and legacy of civil rights pioneer and NAACP co-founder, Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois. The center is reimagining the historic Clinton AME Zion Church in Great Barrington as an African-American heritage site and cultural center that celebrates the rich African-American history of the Berkshires, which is new information to many of the people that I've been meeting and having discussions with. Next slide. This is just a quick overview of some of our latest conceptual renderings. We've been in the process of going through reviews with the town of Great Barrington and its various boards and committees. We've been very successful in moving that process forward and is super excited to kind of really get the project into high gear. Next slide. So this is just some of the schematics, very much updated, that give you an overview of the 3 levels. In the slide to the left, which has number 1 and 2, we now have this opportunity to create a new welcome center by lifting the building up and creating a space that allows people to enter and rise and reflect through the church. On the main floor, which is the 3 and 4, that will be the primary exhibits. It's the sanctuary space, and will be the place that we will have our permanent exhibits, museum-like exhibits and renderings, as well as some items from Clinton Church that we have in our archives. And in the third image, which is the top level, we're calling it the Du Bois Room, it will be a place where people can share their stories and their reflections about their experience and any other histories that they may have gathered in connection to Dr. Du Bois or relevant African-American history in the Berkshires. Next slide. This is where we are today. So thanks to the funding that we've been able to raise and in partnership with organizations like yours, we are now in the stabilization phase. And so we actually have a crew that is there out every day, pretty much going floorboard by floorboard, I like to call it, to assess the conditions of the materials there and to begin the process of the stabilization work so that we can move it forward to the renderings that you saw at the start. Next slide. So kind of to understand the timeline, you may have seen this before. We've completed phase 1, which was the roof repair and the first structural stabilization. We are now in phase, I like to call it 2, which is a 2-parter, which is kind of remediating any mold, completing the roof work, and repairing any parts of the structure that are unstable so that we can begin the next process of raising the building and installing new drainage. We are also simultaneously starting to work on the architectural and exhibit design for the center. We have a couple of photos to share coming up next. And then, of course, the last big phase for which we will need a capital campaign to get us the doors open is the actual formation of the visiting center and the museum and the exhibit/performance and community space. Next slide. So this is just some pictures from my last visit, just so that you guys can see, we've actually cleaned out the entire space. A lot of the items are in storage, but like we were able to save some pews, to think about how we can repurpose them. We've been taking some of the wood. I had a great idea speaking to Beth about how we might be able to engage some of the greenagers to take some of the wood and repurpose it as signage in our visitor/welcome center, thinking of a land acknowledgement and also an acknowledgement about the Underground Railroad in adjacent areas of the region. Next slide. And this is a recent full day exhibit design and development. So we actually had one of our vendors, Crown Design, come and bring some of the exhibit material in, and we had kind of a focus group session. We invited historians, scholars, members of the community, and one of our board members who actually was a congregant at Clinton Church for over 30 years. And we're reviewing some of the elements and the features that we will be including in the exhibit and design. And that was just a truly powerful day of testimony and testament to the heavy lift and the work that's been done in partnership with organizations like yours, but also just really good excitement to see it in real time, how far we come, but also the work that's yet ahead. Next slide. And so wanted to give you an update on what we're doing this year. One of our key objectives is to center the center without having a physical space. So in conjunction with the board, we have decided that going forward each year, we will have a theme for the work that we do in terms of our programming and events. And it will be based on a quote from Dr. Du Bois's work. And so this year we have selected Reflections on Democracy as our theme. You can see the quote that's here, and we'll also share a link with everyone. I'll drop it in the chat afterwards. We are encouraging everyone in the community to read and reflect on this quote and to share your hopes for our democracy in 2024 with us. Next slide. And so this is some of the press that we've been getting that we just wanted to share with you guys. We've really been doing a great job of reaching out to the community to tell our story, to help us increase fundraising and build a community. Next up on our agenda is a 4-part series in our Reflections on Democracy effort, which will be a scholarly salon series in person and both virtually, which will invite people to reflect on democracy and leadership, democracy in the arts, democracy in education, and democracy in philanthropy. And so we're super excited to be working in collaboration with several of the venues in the Berkshires to be able to host these until our building is open and ready. Next slide. And then Dan joined us at an amazing celebration that we have, which will now be an annual event. We know that the Legacy Committee does a great job in Great Barrington of hosting a series of events to celebrate the birth and the legacy of Dr. Du Bois. And it's always been a little bit of a challenge to figure out where the center can fit in since we don't have an actual space. And so this year, we decided to own the night before. So we're calling it the Birthday Eve celebration. And so we hosted a reflections reception, which will be the theme that we'll use going forward. We had over 150 people come and join us at St. James Place. Picture all the way to the far left, of course, includes Dan with us, but it was a great way to bring everyone back. We had posters that showed some of the items in terms of what's going to be inside and the outside of the space, and really was able to roll out this new Reflections on Democracy theme and encourage the community to be on this journey with us. And so that's the end of the presentation there. Don't know if you want to talk about any more specifics or have questions, but I want to be mindful that I know we have several presenters today, but happy to also answer any questions you might have either now or in the chat as time permits.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you so much, Nye. It's an amazing project, and we're pleased. Housatonic Heritage was the original fiscal sponsor to sort of get this project on its feet, years ago, I think 7 or 8 years ago, when it was an idea and this historic building was in danger of either collapsing or being demolished to make room for something else. And a group of local citizens had the vision to restore it and create what Nye is talking about now, which would be an integral part of the African-American experience in Berkshire County, and was envisioned years ago in a master plan about Du Bois and African Americans in South Berkshire County. And that report did envision a visitor slash education slash interpretation center, but we had no idea that this historic building some 10 years later would become available. So we're so pleased. And now with Nye at the helm, we're more hopeful than ever for the prospects here. So thank you, Nye.
Thank you. And I just to tap into that visitor center, we definitely want to make sure that it's a hub that highlights all of the different areas, sites, both online and in real time that people can visit to gain a better understanding about the journey of Dr. Du Bois and his connection to the region, as well as African American history locally.
Thank you very much. Truly appreciated. Speaking of amazing projects where we, have had and continue to have a role as a fiscal sponsor, I'm going to turn it over to Tessa Kelly, who just does a spectacular job with a couple of programs. One you may be familiar with, the mastheads in Pittsfield, but another program that she is working on developing now in Pittsfield's West Side community. And I'll turn it over to Tessa. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Dan. Great to meet you, Nye. All right, so I am going to present two projects in a row. I'm going to start by talking about the masthead. It looks like someone needs to enable me to screen share. It says host disabled participant screen sharing, or maybe I need to become a co-host.
There you go.
Thanks, Dan. Okay, great. So I'm going to show in order 3 projects that the mastheads did this year. So as I think many people on this call already know, and Nye, you may be one of those that doesn't know, but the mastheads began as the construction of 5 mobile writing studios that each are based on the work of a historic author who was working in Pittsfield during the American Renaissance. So Melville, Hawthorne, Thoreau, Longfellow, and Oliver Wendell Holmes. So the core of our program, which actually we're nearing our 10-year anniversary, began as using those 5 studios as a platform to bring new emerging writers back to the Berkshires, kind of in the legacy of the historic authors who are working here. For the past couple of years, we've formed a semi-permanent relationship with Arrowhead, and Leslie's on this call, where we have located the 5 studios. But this past year, I think the most interesting updates to share with you all have had to do with a portion of the mastheads that we have been building over the past several years, which is the question of how we use the program not only to invite emerging professional writers from afar to come to the Berkshires, but also how we really uplift Berkshire residents. And we specifically focus on young kids in Pittsfield to do that. So Sarah Trudgeon, who she and I co-direct the mastheads, she runs a poetry program in the Pittsfield Public Schools, Morningside, Conti, and Crosby. So the work I'm going to show are 3 design projects where we have really brought some of the student voices forward into the kind of cultural space of the Berkshires. So this first project is tree tags on North Street, which we installed last summer. There are 80 of these tree tags, and they are meant to look like arboretum tags, and they activate all of the street trees going up and down the downtown walking loop. And they are just so special and beautiful. I encourage you all to go walk North Street and find them all. I'll just go through some. When you come home, you smell like a field of flowers. Mom, I love you like I love the earth. That's from a 3rd grader. I am a bird. When I fly, the houses are like tiny crumbles of cereal. Today, I feel like a butterfly, and a little sad and very happy too. I hope you love to read. I can complete my dream. Get ready to be smart. I like that I'm athletic and handsome, and I love my hair and my basketball skills. I'm a strong force. I am a ball full of love. I laugh the hardest when I'm with JoJo. I am 20% diamond and 20% sapphire. I'm 20% cat and 15% flower. I'm good at drawing. I'm good at writing. I'm good at caring about people. Now I feel like a poet. It felt like I had $10,000 in my pocket and I didn't even know it. I feel like a tall skyscraper when I stand up for myself. I wish the chairs would fly around wherever you needed them to go. So that was the first project that we did this year, this past summer. The second one, we sort of built off of that. The Clark Art Museum reached out to us and wanted to talk about collaborating with the mastheads on some sort of educational program. So we told them about this recent installation we had done on North Street, and we asked what they would think about using our next semester of student poems coming from the Pittsfield Public School kids to do a temporary installation on the grounds of the museum, and they agreed to this. So about 60 of our kids got to have their words installed at the Clark. And that took place this past fall. So these, we tried to continue the theme of using items that you would actually see installed on trees in an arboretum or in sort of a horticultural setting, and then to kind of tweak them in a way to turn them into a secret poetry installation. So this one says, I am the sound of rain. The trees are art. The fence is a rock. The trees are like people, and the leaves are like hair. I'm a big gorilla jumping around my house. Snow is a white cow falling. I see the trees, they are moving, and they look like the seas blooming. The crystal is like an egg. The tree is wobbly, snow is white rice. So now we're getting into some images of the day that we had students and families come so we first had all of the students come to the Clark before they wrote the poems. And while they were there, they had a guided tour of the museum and the grounds, and they wrote their poetry. And then we sifted through them and selected lines and made the tree straps. And these are now images of kids coming back with their families and trying to locate where their specific tree straps were. And it was the most joyful event. Kids were running around with delight, trying to find where their words were and calling out to their friends when they found theirs. The families were so excited. There was one family where 4 generations of the family came, and they had never been to the Clark, and they were so, so proud to have their child's words installed there. So here's everybody heading up the hill. And let's see, I'll show you some more of the poems as we get to them. And every semester we create these books that are a complete anthology of the student poems that were created that semester. So we were bringing those along with us, trying to find all of the tags on the grounds. That one can't quite see the full text, but just wanted to show some of the family portraits and really the pride that this event generated. It was so cold, I felt like a snowman. Some of these we've seen. When I'm full of emotion, I'm a rocket ship. Somewhere in Spanish, la estatua es una hermosa como un árbol anaranjado. And then the inside looks like the outside, which I think is so brilliant for a student to write at the Clark. And then this one, el árbol es una piñata, which I think was great because the students were there when all of the last leaves were falling off of the trees. So they're saying the tree is a piñata. And then the last update I'll show from Masthead's work this year is the hat house. So I mentioned that the Mastheads began as the creation of these mobile writing studios and the beginning of a writer's residency program. And since that initial point, Sarah Trudgeon, who is a poet, and I, who am an architect, we sort of just use the Mastheads as a platform to freely experiment between those two fields, poetry and architecture, and how they can come together to uplift public spaces in Pittsfield with kind of low cost but high impact projects that use poetry and writing and design to just kind of bring joy to people's everyday experiences of the city. So this project is called the Hat House, and it is another way that we are trying to celebrate the student poetry coming out of the Pittsfield Public Schools that we support and help to instruct. So this project came out of a conversation with the West Side Legends, who you'll hear about in the next project I'm about to show, who are a neighborhood leadership group in this neighborhood called the West Side, where this site is located. And they asked us about working together to create a station to give out free mittens or hats to kids at this corner lot where kids wait for the bus in the winter. So we designed this structure that we call the Hat House. We built it actually onto the guardrail so that we would not have to create any ground disturbance, because technically this is in the riverfront area, so we couldn't actually build anything into the ground, but the guardrail was already there, so we used that as kind of a starting point for the design. And created this structure that has 16 cubbies. Each one has a plexiglass door with a little knob that you can open, and then there are hooks on the top. And this is actually our second year of filling the Hat House. And last year we gave out about 800 free hats, and we gave out about 800 free hats this year as well. Each hat was embroidered with a line of poetry from one of our student poets. So we restocked throughout the month of January and February about once a week. And the hats just go so fast, and you get to see people wearing them up and down North Street. I walked by a man one day who was just wearing a hat that said, "I did good things today," which came from one of the kids. This one says, "My cat is sweet, but too sweet." This one says, "I am a shark in the water making friends. I am a sour pineapple." So that is the Hat House. And those were 3 projects that we did this year in Pittsfield through the mastheads. And I see I'm a little over time, but I'm going to quickly show you this next project, which is in partnership with this great group called the West Side Legends, which I mentioned. In addition to co-directing the mastheads, we have just an architecture practice, which does other kinds of architecture work in Pittsfield. So this is a collaboration with the West Side Legends, who over the past 3 or 4 years, we've been working together in partnership with Francis Jones Sneed, first to complete a study on the history of redlining in Pittsfield and how that impacted the West Side neighborhood specifically. Then we did a big design study into the history of urban renewal and how that impacted the West Side. And one of the kind of biggest priorities that came out of that work was the desire for the West Side Legends, the desire among the West Side Legends to figure out a way to support the construction of new high quality affordable housing in the neighborhood. So this is a project that is supporting the West Side Legends in the activation of that goal, the creation of an affordable housing project, 15 townhouse units that will be for sale, not for rent, in the West Side. And there's an amazing program through Mass Housing that is supporting this construction project. This is the location of the Hat House right here. That we just were looking at, and then the housing is just right down the road. So we're looking at some of the brick and masonry buildings along Columbus Ave, some of which are still standing, but others of which have been lost. These 2 grayed out images have been demolished, sadly, but we're really trying to use this project as a way to reconstruct the importance of this strip here, Columbus Ave, and to kind of solidify a new project there that can hold the neighborhood, strengthen the street front. We're trying our best to figure out if we can do it out of masonry to really harken back to some of those old buildings. And these are just letters from some of our partners, Mass Housing and the Cambridge Housing Authority. We actually just received a $100,000 grant from the National Endowment for the Arts, we found out last week. So that was huge. And so So those are the two projects that I am sharing today, and apologies for going a bit long, but thanks for listening.
Well, very inspiring, Tessa, as usual. And the work, with the children of Pittsfield, and now more recently with the folks in the West Side community. Tony Jackson, Marvin Curry, the others that are there, on the probably are feeling displaced, but are looking back to their hometown and now seeing the work that's being done to right some of the wrongs that have been done over decades there. Very inspiring work, Tessa. So we're super pleased that we can support it in some small way, but I know you're doing the heavy lifting there on the ground, but thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, excellent, inspiring as usual. So if any questions, again, please paste in the chat box, and if we can't get to them, I'll certainly funnel them out to any of our presenters today. So thanks again, Tessa. Truly appreciated. Next up, we've been involved with the National Park Service's Operation Pollination for several years now, and other partners have come on, including Rotary International and our own Rotary District 7890, which covers a good portion of Massachusetts and Connecticut. And our own program coordinator, Vivian Orlowski, will tell you about Operation Pollination. And thanks, Vivian, for putting this together. Oh, but you'll need to unmute.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Great. Let me see what I'm going to tell you. Is Mariah helping with the slides or?
Yes.
Okay, thank you both then. Let me get this text ready so I can cover all this in. There we go. So the next slide, please. In recent years, Housatonic Heritage Operation Pollination has been coordinating with Berkshire Community College to support protecting and expanding pollinator habitat on campus, along with taking steps towards more climate resilience. Today, I'll briefly review highlights of 3 phases of our collaboration with BCC. First of all, planning. Housatonic Heritage helped BCC facilitate that in 2023 with the Conway School to create ecological campus design. And then starting in 2024, BCC acting to implement key ecological campus projects. Environmental science professor Bruce Wynn recently updated Housatonic Heritage on main projects already underway and or approved already by BCC President Ellen Kennedy and other key administrators. And the last phase, or the current phase, is that BCC is currently considering a new initiative on workforce development and environmental justice that connects with all this campus environmental project work. I guess the next slide. We started in 2022 with coordinating BCC with the Conway School's graduate program in sustainable landscape planning and design. Next, please. In spring 2023, a Conway grad student team came to BCC from the Conway School in Northampton on numerous occasions. They evaluated various parts of the 180-acre BCC campus and had individual meetings and 2 community forums with faculty, staff, administrators, students. Next, please. After 3 months of intense efforts, the Conway grad students published their ecological campus design titled, quote, "A Living Laboratory on the Learning Landscape of Berkshire Community College," end quote. This 30-page plan started with the indigenous history and the natural history of the campus. Next slide, please. Then the major focus of the plan started with an overview of various segments of the current campus. Next slide, please. Wetlands, for example, are an ecologically significant area of the 180-acre campus, and they're primarily located south of the athletic center and AstroTurf soccer field. In order to preserve the wetlands, yet provide more student and community educational opportunities, BCC is planning to create an accessible boardwalk with interpretive signage throughout the wetlands, which are also very important for pollinators, and making those connections in the signage about the plants and the site. Next slide, please. Meadows and lawns are also significant sections of campus. Next slide, please. The existing 10-acre meadow combined with 5 acres of trail in the forest are the setting for the 15-acre John Lambert Nature Trail, already in existence. In season, the meadow hosts vibrant wildflowers like goldenrods, milkweeds, and asters, which attract pollinators, supporting the entire ecosystem. Next slide, please. BCC is now planning to expand meadows, especially by transforming turf lawn areas, for example, such as along the main road, which is Pittsfield's West Street, which divides the sections of the campus. Next slide, please. The B lawn model, BEE lawn model, as successfully demonstrated at the University of Minnesota, would help overcome some of the food desert areas that most lawns are, and would be by using low-growing plants such as Dutch white clover, Virginia strawberry, creeping thyme, and many other plants that provide nourishment and habitat for pollinators, yet can be mowed less frequently and used as a lawn. Next slide, please. BCC already recognizes the importance of protecting pollinators and other wildlife and will continue to not apply toxic herbicides while seeking new ways of increasing biodiversity. Next slide, please. Another ecological design concerns vehicles, parking, pedestrians, trails, and walking space. Next slide, please. The major project on the BCC agenda is photovoltaic solar panels to cover and shade major parking lots, and also link to EV charging stations for the cars parked there. Next slide, please. BCC faculty has already engaged students in helping identify specific sites on the nature trail for interpretation, and to then expand and improve the signage with QR codes. So that's already underway, and hopefully we can see that soon, the final results by the end of the semester. Next slide, please. Now, BCC is considering enhancing the impact of all these ecological campus projects, and there are many more which we didn't have time to present now, but there are many more of these projects, by initiating workforce development and environmental justice as proposed by Housatonic Heritage Operation Pollination. Next slide, please. This vocational education project would mean creating a landscape workforce trained to maintain a healthier environment that helps the workers and impacts the clients in all sectors: residential, business, nonprofit, education, etc. Next slide, please. Environmental justice not only provides a healthier landscape for clients, but especially for those in the landscape workforce itself, who often include a significant portion of BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and people of color. Next. As a matter of fact, just historically, in relation to this, the big breakthrough in recognizing the impact of these herbicides and pesticides was against the glyphosate Roundup, a weed killer, quote unquote, and a groundskeeper who was a person of color in the California school system, used these products for many years. And as a result, before long, he developed a very serious cancer, which by the time it went to trial was fatal. And due to that, he was awarded, and the case against using these herbicides and pesticides, he was awarded $289 million against the at that time Monsanto and now Bayer Roundup glyphosate chemicals. So there are many other people like this out there who hopefully haven't gotten to that stage yet and wouldn't get that type of recognition, as sad as it is, but they're out there daily and they're taking care of our landscapes. Next slide, please. Along with Housatonic Heritage Operation Pollination, we have made initial contacts with several potential sources of support for the workforce development and environmental justice segment of the work at BCC. And this includes Massachusetts government's climate chief, Melissa Hoffer. She was recently interviewed by the Berkshire Eagle, and previously at a meeting, she responded to my personal inquiry, quote, "How can the Healy administration encourage schools and colleges to create climate resilient, healthy landscapes as Berkshire Community College is doing, both for workforce training and for students and community education?" Chief Hoffer enthusiastically responded and stated that the idea of such programs were new to her, but she thinks that they definitely merited support. And I'm going to be following up on that with her and with the college. Another source of support, next slide, please. Another source of support for the BCC model of workforce development and environmental justice that I'll just briefly mention in order to keep this short is the Massachusetts Pollinator Network, where our Operation Pollination helps serve on their steering committee with various projects throughout the state. And another source of support is the Operation Pollination Project nationally, which has developed the connections with national heritage areas like ours. We're currently one of 23 national heritage areas in Operation Pollination, and with both Rotary International and various Rotary districts throughout the country. Next slide, please. Housatonic Heritage has signed pollinator resolutions with Rotary District 7890, which covers Western Massachusetts and Northwestern Connecticut. Next slide, please. Housatonic Heritage Executive Director, along with Rotary District Governor Randy Chappell, signed this resolution, and that ties us to them, and we hope that they'll get involved in this project at BCC. So next, please, to the final slide. On the encouraging note of what I just related, I'm going to conclude and ask you to please follow up with any comments, suggestions, or questions about the BCC Campus Project and Workforce and Justice proposal and Operation Pollination in general. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Vivian. Inspiring work, and it ties together a lot of our partners, including Berkshire Community College, that houses our Oral History Center. Berkshire Environmental Action Team is highly involved in this sort of work. Our other partners at Green Agers as well. There's just so much going on around the county and around the region, and hopefully we continue to play a role to pull all the pieces together, support it where we can, to act as a catalyst. Thank you, Vivian, for putting that together. There's so much to be done all the time. It's like rolling the huge rock uphill all the time to get things done. But I think this work with BCC, especially in the areas of workforce development, in the social and environmental justice arenas, fits so nicely with everything else that we do. So thank you, Vivian, for moving that forward. You know, in the interest of time, we generally keep these to about 45 or 50 minutes or so. I wanted to quickly mention, you know, one of the other projects that we created and continue to work very, very diligently on, which is the Western New England Greenway, which is a bikeway from Norwalk, Connecticut to the Canadian border. It's roughly 380 miles long, and we work with a dozen or more partners along the way, including Berkshire Regional Planning and, you know, other partners, you know, the Departments of Transportation in 3 states. But that program, you'll probably be seeing more of, hopefully in the summer and fall in Berkshire County, as we work with regional planning and with, I think it's 11 municipalities to install directional signage for people to be able to navigate that bikeway. So it utilizes the Ashwil-to-Cook Trail as well as back and side roads. But as again, as I mentioned, it's in the interest of time, I'll skip that. I'll skip any more about that and say thank you for joining us. As mentioned, we'll post the recording to our YouTube channel where it will live forevermore. And if there are any questions, please send them our way. You can always email me. Our general email box is info@housatonicheritage.org. Our website is housatonicheritage.org, where you can find information about all of these projects and programs. To our presenters, Nye, thank you so much. Vivian, Tessa had to go, and Judith, who directs our Oral History Center, all great work, and we're so pleased that we can support it. And I'm grateful to my Board of Trustees for allowing me to support all of these and to do the work that we do. So again, thank you so much. Unless there's anything else, Jane, did you have any other remarks?
No, just really thank you all. This was fascinating. I'm always so impressed by how much work gets done.
Keep working on it. Yeah. Anyway, have a great day. Thanks again for joining us, and look for the recording.
Hey there.
Thanks.
Bye.
Hang on, I'm just
Bye
getting
now.
off.